Peace will fill the world when we finally understand that only from within can it be spread throughout the land. Every single person living peace in what we do, only then will our dream come true. Only then will our dream come true. Only then will our dream come true.
Good morning, friends. I'm Leona Evans, minister at Unity of San Luis Obispo, an inclusive, progressive, spiritual community affirming the good in all life. Welcome to our Sunday morning live stream. I am absolutely thrilled to be here, and I'm delighted that you're here to join us this morning. We have a very special service for you. I'm really excited about the topic. As always, we have wonderful music and we have a centering meditation that will give us the opportunity to integrate the message and to feel stronger in our faith, in the one presence and one power, God the Good. So let's take a moment to relax before we get into our service. And why is that? Because we need to be centered and fully focused and give the greatest gift we can ever give to anyone, our full attention. To be fully present in this moment, listening to and integrating the idea of oneness of all life, the idea that peace begins with me, the idea that we're good by nature and we were made in love. All of these ideas are very, very important to our spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being, because those ideas live inside of us. And when I speak the affirmations of truth, they're not coming to you for the first time. They're coming from you. And the unfolding process is like unrolling a scroll and realizing that all that we need is already within the spectrum of our own consciousness. What we need is to be awakened. And so, let's take a deep breath and relax once again. Let's feel our muscles just settling into the chair, feeling comfortable, feeling safe. And let us know and affirm, I am now open and receptive to the living spirit of truth. Once again, I am now open and receptive to the living spirit of truth. And so it is. Amen. Let's begin our service this morning, as always, with a wonderful joy song performed by Matthew J. Evans.
Good morning. Today we're going to sing House on a Rock by Janet Manning. Please sing along with the lyrics on the bottom of the screen. I built my house on a rock, it's got a firm foundation, and I've got a principle within. I built my house on a rock, and it's a sweet sensation, knowing I'm free to love the world that I'm in. And I get up every morning with a song in my soul. I'm a child of God, therefore I'm well and whole. I built my house on a rock, it's got a firm foundation, and I've got a principle within. I built my house on a rock, it's got a firm foundation, and I know the truth that sets me free. I built my house on a rock, and it's a jubilation, knowing I'm meant to live so joyously. And I go out every morning with a spring in my step. doing what I ought to do with zeal and pep. I built my house on a rock, it's got a firm foundation, and I know the truth that sets me free. I built my house on a rock, it's got a firm foundation, and I see the good in everything. I built my house on a rock, and I'm a new creation, loving my winters 'cause they're followed by spring. And I look out every morning on the world and I say, all the life I've yet to live begins today. I built my house on a rock, it's got a firm foundation, and I've got a principle within. And I know the truth that sets me free. And I've got a principle within. Have a great morning, everybody.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That was just lovely. I've got my house on a rock. I've got a firm foundation, and I know the truth that sets me free. I have a principle within. Wonderful song by the late Janet Manning, a friend of mine, a colleague, a composer, a minister, someone who wrote incredibly powerful lyrics and relatable melodies that allowed us to just keep those songs in the forefront of our minds as we went about our daily business. I still do. I still find myself humming Janet's songs, and I just wanted to take a moment to pay tribute to her and to let you know something that not very many Unity people know. There is a song that most Unity churches and centers sing around Easter time, and the lyrics are, I am free, I am unlimited. There are no chains that bind me. I am free. I am unlimited right now. Right now. We have sung it as a group. We have sung it after we have done a transformation in consciousness. It used to be a burning bowl, and now it's the paper that dissolves in liquid, to illustrate the idea of transformation and to realize that we're moving from a consciousness of limitation to a consciousness of greater and greater unfoldment. And so this song is one that will go through my mind many times during the day. I love it. It is extremely powerful, and it is illustrative of the purpose of our teachings, to become free, to realize that we have always been free, but we haven't known it. And the idea of knowing it is what our teachings are about, knowing that we're free. So, before we get into our topic for this morning, I just want to share with you that I believe that Unity of San Luis Obispo is an interfaith, multicultural ministry. This is so important to me because our Unity philosophy emphasizes the oneness of all life and our interconnectedness, which is not always apparent to the five senses. And in the world we're living in, this is a time where the differences among us are emphasized in a negative way, creating more separation, more animosity, more fear of the other, and a tendency to stay locked in our safe groups and not venture out for fear of being harmed or for fear that our conspiracy theories or rumors might prove to be true. The fact is, there are also differences that educate us illumine our minds, open our hearts to the unique ways that different cultures celebrate the same ideas. For me, this is one of the most important aspects of our ministry, to be a voice for equality among the cultures, and to recognize that we're so much closer to one another than we have ever realized. You see, as long as our voices are out there celebrating the unity of all life, honoring other cultures, embracing the similarities as well as the differences, we can bring balance to a world that's badly in need of demonstrating the universal power of love. We do this through unity, through seeing the similarities and honoring the differences among us, through lifting our minds and hearts to a level of acceptance, compassion, true understanding, and respect. So, with all this in mind, today I would like us to honor Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, which is one of the most important of all of the Mexican holidays. It is celebrated in Mexico for 3 days, October 31st through November 2nd. Now, even though the Day of the Dead begins on Halloween, it's not a Mexican version of Halloween. While there are certainly similarities, there are also major differences. For one, Halloween is seen as a dark night of terror and mischief. But the Day of the Dead is celebrated with life-affirming joy. Life-affirming joy. The goal of the Day of the Dead is to demonstrate love and respect for deceased family members and loved ones. And they do this by participating in the activities that their deceased loved ones enjoyed in life. Now, I'd like to just take a moment here to digress. And I just want to repeat what I just said. They participate in the activities that their deceased loved ones enjoyed in life. Now, when I do memorial services, I always mention that one of the greatest ways that our loved ones can live on is by our embodying the qualities that we loved and admired most about them, and bringing them into our lives, integrating them into our daily behaviors. Not only is this a way to enhance our own life, but it honors our loved ones because we're taking a part of them with us. And so when I first read about honoring loved ones who have passed by participating in activities that their loved ones enjoyed in life, I was thinking of my own experiences of grief and my inability to understand that enjoying oneself doesn't mean that we're not sorry that our loved one passed. I would never think of doing something that brought me joy while I was in such grief. I felt like denying myself. I felt like crawling into a corner and being alone. I was part, or have been part, of a culture that fears death and obsesses about it and doesn't allow it to be discussed or processed, that has only one way of demonstrating sorrow and grief. And I'm beginning to understand that it's important to appropriate some of the ideas that we'll be talking about embracing the concept of death and recognizing that not only is the passing of a loved one time for sorrow, but it's also a time of tremendous celebration, not only in theory, but in action. And that includes enjoying the activities that our loved one who has passed enjoyed. Think about it. If that person, that individual really loved us, they wouldn't want to see us in terrible, terrible grief and loss. They wouldn't want that for us. And while that's an important part of the grief process and one that we could never dream of eliminating, it seems to add a dimension of life to me to know that we can also grieve and carry their memory with us by expressing joy as well. Now, in the Mexican tradition, each year the dead awaken to celebrate life with their loved ones. And so death is seen as a natural cycle of life. On the Day of the Dead, people wear sugar skulls decorated with diamond-like eyes and big smiles. The skeletons are depicted as being happy, symbolizing a happy afterlife. The skulls represent the overcoming of great challenges. They also represent the death of an old way of life and the rebirth of a new way of living. The diamond eyes represent the inner beauty of the individual that shines through even in the darkest of images. Let's take a moment now to listen to the wonderful music of Brett Mitchell and Matthew J. Evans, and then we'll come back and talk more about celebrating life through the Day of the Dead.
Here's a Broadway song from the pen of Jerry Herman. The Best of Times, 1983, from La Cage aux Folles. One, two, you know what to do. The best of times is now. What's left of summer but a fading rose. The best of times is now. As for tomorrow, well, who knows, who knows, who knows. So hold this moment fast and live in love as hard as you know how. And make this moment last, because the best of times is now, is now, is now. Now, not some forgotten yesterday. Now, tomorrow is too far away. So hold this moment fast and live as hard as you know how, and make this moment last, because the best of times is now, is now, is now. Now, not some forgotten yesterday. Now, tomorrow is too far away. So make this moment fast. Live and love it hard as you know how, and make this moment last, because the best of times is now, is now, is now. The this moment last, because the best of times is now, is now, is now, is now, is now. It certainly is.
Yes.
You know what I mean, don't you?
Of course I know. It's now.
Come on, Matthew. You know, and you guys know.
If not now, when?
True.
Thank you so much, Brett Mitchell and Matthew J. Evans. That was a wonderful rendition of a song that I really consider to be one of my favorites. And I agree with you, Brett. The time is now. We are the people to make the change that we want to see, and the time is now. So thank you for that wonderful song. Let's go back to talking about some of the traditions that go on during the Day of the Dead, which is one of the most important of the Mexican holidays, and it's gaining more notoriety in the United States and in other countries as well. People give gifts to friends on the Day of the Dead. They celebrate with parties and parades. Children go from house to house asking for small gifts of candy or money. But unlike Halloween, tricks are not part of the equation. The Day of the Dead is not about treating death as something dark and frightening. It's actually about laughing in the face of death. And although it is about remembering lost loved ones, the holiday is much more of a time to celebrate their memories than to mourn their loss. And so, although there's a wide variation in the way the Day of the Dead is celebrated, generally speaking, from October 31st to November 2nd, people across Mexico clean the graves of the relatives and they decorate them with marigolds or other bright and beautiful flowers. They decorate them with candles and the foods and the beverages that their loved ones enjoyed in life. Many times they stay overnight in the cemetery and hold a vigil at their loved ones' graves. It's also common to build a decorated altar in their home that incorporates reminders of their loved ones. Now, one of the most important reasons for us to study the value of the Day of the Dead is that in American culture, death is seen only as tragic. It's associated with negative emotions, something to avoid, something to fear. We do everything we can to shield ourselves from the reality of death. But the attitude toward death in Mexico was summed up by an Italian author and Nobel laureate named Octavio Paz, who said, and I quote, "The word death is not pronounced in New York or Paris or London because it burns the lips. The Mexican, in contrast, is familiar with death, jokes about it, caresses it, sleeps with it, celebrates it. Life and death are inseparable, and when the former lacks meaning, the latter becomes equally meaningless. Mexican death is the mirror of Mexican life." Now, this doesn't mean that Mexican people don't experience grief and a horrifying sense of loss. It's just that they live with a great deal more acceptance as they honor both sides of the process of life. And of course, anytime we embrace a paradox, it synthesizes into a new level of awareness, a new level of wholeness. Now, there's another aspect of the Day of the Dead that I want to focus on, and that's the understanding that the more we recognize the inevitability of death, the more able we are to appreciate our lives, and the more able we are to express gratitude and celebrate moments in life that too often we take for granted. I want to talk for a moment about a book that an author named Stephen Levine wrote perhaps about 20 years ago, a little more maybe, and it's called A Year to Live. I recommend that book highly because he talks about imagining and living with a situation whereby we have been told that we only have a year to live. And he asks us to understand the concept of now, of a limited time that we have to be in this body on this earth. He asks us to leave the land of denial and move into a place in consciousness where, because we know that our time is limited, we treasure every moment. We treasure it, we honor it, we respect it, and we make the most of it. That is the power of A Year to Live, and that is the power of honoring and celebrating the Day of the Dead. It's about truly facing the fact that our time in our bodies on this earth is not going to be forever. And knowing that will automatically allow the compassion that is within us and the beauty that is within us and the desire to live life to the fullest come to the fore in ways that we wouldn't have known if we stayed in denial. Now, the Day of the Dead and the Buddhist philosophy of life and death have a great deal in common. They both emphasize the impermanence of life and the limits of human knowledge. And the purpose for this understanding is to cultivate compassion and a greater reverence for life. It is thought in many of the mystical traditions that celebrating life is not fully understood unless we understand the impermanence of it. And then we can truly acknowledge and honor the eternal now, this precious moment that allows us to experience so much more than we do when we've got blinders on. Blinders that won't let us see unpleasant things, blinders that won't understand the impermanence of life and want to talk about things lasting forever. I understand the need to do that. Don't think I don't. I really do understand the need to do that. To do everything we can to avoid aging, to take any kind of surgery and any kind of exercise regimen for the sole purpose of prolonging our youth. I understand all about that. I don't think it's terribly healthy, but I understand it, and who wouldn't want to give it a go? But the point is, when we're living in the eternal now, there is a reason for every season, as it were, a time and a purpose for everything under the heavens, to quote from Ecclesiastes. The idea that one part of life is better than all of the others, and we are going to try to prolong it as much as we can to keep from going into an adventure that might not be as fun. I mean, we've seen the effects of aging. We understand that the probabilities of staying healthy through all of that are not necessarily the majority of cases. And our spiritual work becomes very important to us to affirm life, not to deny moving to the next phase of life. And so who's to say, well, except for all of the advertisers and people who want to sell us products and people who have a certain financial and big business need to keep us buying the products that are going to withstand the aging process. We need to embrace our fear of moving forward to a time which, based on our spiritual teachings, ideally should be just as good or better than the one we have moved through. Now, obviously, we can't move through anything if we're still holding on to it. I remember I've been at Unity of San Luis Obispo for 27 years, and when I first came, I thought it would be a wonderful idea if we brought a psychologist and lecturer in to give us a workshop on aging on purpose. It was a very powerful and positive book title, and I interviewed her on my radio program, and she was delightful, and she had a very pragmatic and uplifting view. And, many of the people were, 40s, 50s going into that time when you got to start thinking about that. Nobody signed up. Nobody signed up. And I understood that. I understood it. Because if you don't have to look at aging in the face, why bring yourself the torture of doing it? And also because we just believe that we have the right creams and salves and the right doctors to make sure we keep our youth. So how can we live in the now when we're dismissing the future? We give thanks and we thank God for this beautiful particular time in our lives, although mostly we take it for granted. But when we think that that's going to change, we start getting really anxious. Nobody prepares us for aging. Nobody prepares us for death. They prepare us to try to get away without doing either one of those things, And yet the spiritual teachings, the mystical teachings tell us to live in the now. How can we say that we're living in the now when we are afraid of the now as the time passes? You see my point? Very difficult. It's very difficult. And those of us who study living in the present moment really need to take that into consideration big time, because when we are so sequestered from the idea of aging and death, we have no resources to count on. We have no resources. We are like babes in the woods. We're feeling that we're going to lose the interest of our spouses, that we're going to be antiquated at our work. Fortunately, these things are starting to change. And thank God they are, because we need to start figuring out what living life to the fullest means at every stage of life. Those were the good old days can be true, but not the only good days, not the only ones. The time is now. The best of times is now, if we can really understand what that means. And as I said before, the synthesis of two opposites being recognized and aligned within our consciousness gives us the opportunity to embrace wholeness. I'm going to miss the time when I danced and jumped around and did all these things, and when I had all this energy. I'll miss them, but I can hardly wait to see what this stage of my development, which in many ways surpasses the one before, because evolution is exactly that, what ways I can see the face of God in what activities in life. And how can I understand that because of the temporary nature of being spiritual beings having a human experience, we are going to be moving. And when we move, it would behoove us to understand how to do it with grace and with poise, looking to this now moment to find the presence of spirit and the laughter and the tears that comprise living life to the fullest. The Day of the Dead is October 31st, two weeks from now. Let's find a way to celebrate it. Let's find a way to rejoice in the fullness of life and to honor that each aspect of life is a divine appointment. A divine appointment to experience our wholeness. Relax now and breathe deeply. This is our time of relaxation and integration of today's message, which is about celebrating the fullness of life and living each moment to the fullest. Let us affirm in the quiet of our own being, I am alive with the life of God. I am whole, strong, courageous. I live each moment and experience the different facets of my life with faith and understanding that every aspect of life, including death, is a divine appointment. But each moment that presents itself is an invitation from our divine I Am to venture outside of our fears, narrow perceptions, and the need to hold on to something that we know just because we're familiar with it. We give thanks that we know all that we need to know to live each moment in light in grace and in truth. And we give thanks for each facet of our lives, knowing that gifts of the Spirit are always present in all forms. And so it is. Amen. I'd like to share with you, as I have been doing these past few weeks, that Diane Davison's grief recovery method, which I recommend highly. I recommend it highly to help us integrate some of the ideas that we've just talked about in celebrating the Day of the Dead. The grief recovery method is just that. It is a wonderful, inventive, powerful, and positive way to deal with our grief and culminate with forgiveness and acceptance. So please get in touch with Diane Davison. She does a wonderful job of facilitating this course, and it's a passion of hers. And so all of that energy is translated into her facilitating the class with grace and ease and powerful insights. Please get in touch with her. Let's bless the gifts that we would share with Unity of San Luis Obispo. Tithing is a spiritual practice. It means that we give that which we desire to experience more of in our lives. We give joyously, and by giving, we realize that we have something to give. We are of value. The law of giving and receiving, the law of reciprocity, the law of attraction, all of that works. And so, as we bless the tithes that you would share with Unity of San Luis Obispo, let me remind you that a portion of all of our gifts and tithes goes to support organizations that honor and work toward human rights and equality of all people, and who support and bless the nurturing of our planet Earth. Let's speak the words of our prosperity statement together. Freely I give, freely I receive. God is my source.
This is the love theme from the French movie The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, 1964, music by Michel Legrand. In the movie, it was all sung. And just gorgeous. If you haven't seen it, please give it a try. It's called I Will Wait for You. I Will Wait for You from the wonderful movie The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Thank you so much, Brett Mitchell and Matthew J. Evans. That was just lovely, so inspiring. I love that tune, and I love the way you interpreted it. It was just lovely. Let's sing our peace song, shall we?
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, united all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joyful vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Let's speak the words of our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Friends, please press the like button and share your comments with us. We love to hear from you. Also, may I remind you to listen to the Get Off Your Affirmation podcast. It's free of charge and available wherever podcasts are sold. Also, on November 7th, we are going to meet again in person at Meadow Park. Please check our website for more information. We will be meeting once a month for in-person get-togethers that focus on action, social action, being the peace we wish to see, understanding how prepared we need to be to walk out into this world and practice our nonviolent teachings with joy and with gratitude. Have a wonderful week. You deserve it.
Every single person living peace in what we do, only then will our dream come true. Only then will our dream come true. Only then will our dream